guys, I'm Emily Keckle, and today on Crash Course Literature, we're going to talk about how the books of Mice and Men, Persepolis, 102 Minutes, and A Modern Text Example, how they all share the same common theme, how a single moment in life can have major impact, and how our choices reveal our character. Let's roll the clip. The classic story of Mice and Men, written by John Steinbeck, tells the story of two friends, George and Lenny. Lenny has a mental disability, which is the primary reason why both of them have trouble keeping a job. This disability is mainly seen through Lenny's like to touch and feel things.
On page 6, while George and Lenny are walking to their new farm job, George notices that Lenny is holding something in his pocket. When George asks him what it is, Lenny refuses to tell him. George took the mouse and threw it across the pool to the other side among the brush. "What do you want a dead mouse anyways? I could pet it with my thumb while we walked along," said Lenny. "Well, you ain't petting no mice while you walking with me." Not only does the mouse represent why Steinbeck named the book, however, it gives a first look into Lenny's disability. This example shows that although George and Lenny are friends, Lenny's disability makes it extremely difficult for the two to get along peacefully. This further shows the common theme in which this moment was why Steinbeck named the book, along with showing the reader more insight towards Lenny's disability. George tells a man named Slim, him and me was both born in Auburn. I knowed his Aunt Clara. She took him in when he was a baby and raised him up. When his Aunt Clara died, Lenny just come along with me out working. Got kind of used to each other after a while. At this time in history, mental disabilities were not treatable in society, and because of this, Lenny was very reliant on family members and friends to take care of him. George's life and future actions changed because of Lenny. The moment Lenny's Aunt Clara died was essential to the story because this is how Lenny and George united and how the conflict in the storyline began. Lenny is sitting in the barn with his new puppy playing when he accidentally plays too rough and kills it. "He was so little," said Lenny. "I was just playing with him, and he made like he's gonna bite me, and I made like I was gonna smack him, and I done it." Lenny is devastated, and while he's in his misery, the farm owner's son's wife, Curly's wife, walks in and tries to help him. However, when she tells him to feel her smooth hair, Lenny grabs hold of her too tightly and she begins to scream. Through all of the commotion, Lenny breaks her neck and kills Curly's wife. He shook her and her body flopped like a fish, and then she was still, for Lenny had broken her neck. Lenny never meant to hurt anyone, whether it was his new puppy or Curly's wife, yet his disability caused him to react violently. Because there was no cure in society for Lenny's disability, Lenny would later become framed as a murderer and would be faced with the consequences. The impact of this event on the storyline is major, as Lenny now was faced with an uncertain future. Steinbeck incorporated this because he wanted the reader to realize that although Lenny committed the crime, he had no control over it. When George and the barn workers find Curly's wife dead, they go hunting for Lenny in order to get revenge. However, George tells the men to go in the opposite direction in order to get to Lenny first. Instead of running away from their crimes again, George decides to kill Lenny himself, instead of letting him be killed by Curly and the other barn workers. He pulled the trigger. The crash of the shot rolled up the hills and rolled down again. Lenny jarred and then settled slowly forward to the sand, and he lay without quivering. At first glance, we are shocked that George would kill Lenny. However, Steinbeck incorporated this in order to show how much George cared for Lenny. George did not want Lenny to live in misery and believed that it would be better to put him down peacefully instead of living behind bars. This one moment determined Lenny's fate and George's future. Although George killed his best friend, it does not define him as a character and rather shows that when you care for someone, you are willing to make sacrifices.
Alright, so that's book 1 of Mice and Men, written by John Steinbeck. Now we're going to talk about the story Persepolis, written by Marjane Satrapi.
The graphic novel Persepolis tells the story of Margie, a young girl growing up in Iran during the Islamic Revolution. Margie is a very independent girl and likes to speak her mind. However, she quickly learns that she must be careful when and where she uses her mouth. As Margie grows throughout the book, she slowly realizes the injustices of her society. Seen on page 35 to 37, Margie's maid, Mary, tells her that she has a crush on the neighborhood boy. Because Mary does not know how to write, Margie helps her write letters to the boy. However, when the family learns about her crush, Margie's father tells the boy that Mary is only a maid, and shortly after the two stop seeing each other. Margie later tells her father, but was it her fault that she was born where she was born? Dad, are you for or against social classes? Margie realizes for the first time that her world is separated by unfair social classes. She's impacted by this moment and becomes more determined to fight against this separation. She not only believes it's unfair to Mary, but to other people in society. On page 117, after a heavy argument with her mother, Margie sneaks down to her basement and tries smoking a cigarette. She states, "It was awful, but this was no moment to give in. With the first cigarette, I kissed childhood goodbye. Now I was an adult." Margie believes that she has to to start acting more like an adult and smokes the cigarette to get revenge off her mother. This moment impacts Margie as she becomes more independent, and from here on out, the pictures in the book are of older Margie instead of younger version. This defines Margie's true personality as she becomes more revengeful and risky. This moment is the start of Margie's teenage years. On page 133, Margie is walking in the street with tennis shoes and tight jeans when members from Guardians of the Revolution stop her. They state, "Lower your scarf, you little whore. Aren't you ashamed to wear tight jeans like these? Go on, get in the car. We are taking you down to the committee." During this time in history, women were not allowed to wear anything but long clothing and black veils. Margie broke major dress code rules and barely got away with it. This moment impacted Margie as she never again went outside wearing these clothes. This moment made Margie realize that being a rebel during the revolution was extremely dangerous and risky. This does not define her personality as she was simply expressing her teenage self. Finally, on page 140, Margie's street is bombed and her next-door neighbors die. She states, "I didn't want to look up. I looked at my trembling legs. I couldn't go forward like a nightmare. Let them be alive. Let them be alive. Let them." This was the first moment in which everything became a reality for Margie. She never believed that something so terrible could happen to her. This defines her as a character because although she felt rebellious, she was clueless of what the future might hold for her and her family. This final build-up in the story makes the reader reflect on what was said earlier in the story and how the war got so out of hand. The book 102 Minutes, written by Jim Dwightler and Kevin Flynn, takes place in New York City during the September 11th, 2009 attacks. The book shares the stories of people trapped in the towers during the terrifying day, along with stories from rescue personnel and family members. On page 13, Deanna DeFontis is in her office when she thinks a bomb went off in the North Tower. A bomb, Deanna DeFontis thought when thinking became possible again. At 8:46:30, an impact had knocked her off her chair in the law office on the 89th floor of the North Tower. Not only did the 9/11 attacks come as a surprise, no one inside the towers knew what was going on. This one moment in history would impact billions throughout the world, as it was the start to the horrible day. This did not define Deanna DeFontis' characteristics in any means because everyone else around her was confused as well. After the North Tower was hit, employees from the South Tower tried to evacuate their tower, however were told to go back to their offices. "Where are you guys going? We saw fireballs coming down." No, all is well here. You can go back to your office. This building is secure." No one at the time knew how desperate the situation was and believed that it would be best for people to keep contained instead of creating more chaos in the street. The impact of this moment is major, as thousands who were told to go back were killed. No one can be blamed for doing this, as nothing like this attack had happened before. The silence after the two towers had collapsed rang for days, and no one knew exactly what to do. Stated in the text, "And let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. May the souls and the souls of all faith departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen." The day started and ended with a bang. No one knew what to say or think. Everyone was in shock. The impact of the 9/11 attacks is too big to put in words, as it continues to educate society 18 years later. Without the attack, America would not be as technically advanced. The cleanup of the towers was depressing and horrifying. Stated in the text, no one answered. They moved forward, deeper into the rubble. The fire roared at 4 World Trade Center. They plowed across the jagged, fierce ground. Rescue personnel believed that they could save more lives after the towers fell, however were shocked to find only a few select people. The impact of this moment illustrates that although the attacks were finished, the U.S. was left with decades worth of repair. In total, the 9/11 attacks left the U.S. speechless for decades, and as a result, educated society on how to make future changes. The supplemental text, Cinderella, written by Jacob and William Grimm, stars a young girl named Cinderella, who lives with her evil stepmother and sisters. Cinderella is given all of the chores and is forced into a life of misery, while her stepfamily lives in luxury. They state, "Here she had to do hard work from morning until evening, get up before daybreak. Besides this, the sisters did everything imaginable to hurt her. There was no bed for her, and because she always looked dusty and dirty, they called her Cinderella." The brothers introduce how poorly Cinderella was being treated because they want the reader to understand the situation. This moment impacts the story as the audience gets a first look into the problem and learns about how Cinderella got her name. Overall, the reader understands how Cinderella's family cooperates with each other and how they treat Cinderella. When Cinderella's mother and stepsisters prepare for the festival, Cinderella asks them if she can come with them. However, the family makes fun of her and eventually tells her no. They state, "It's no use. You are not coming with us, for you have no clothes and you don't know how to dance. We would be ashamed of you." The Grimm brothers want to express the disrespect Cinderella receives from her family. The impact of this event later leads Cinderella to the ball and her happily ever after. This applies to society, in which the brothers explain how you cannot take no for an answer, and how when one is determined, they can accomplish any of their goals. Finally, Cinderella receives her happily ever after and marries the prince. At the wedding, however, the stepsisters try to get a piece of the action. Stated in the text, afterwards, as they came out of the church, the pigeons pecked out the other eye from each of them, and thus, for their wickedness and falsehood, they were punished with blindness as long as they lived. The stepsisters' greed and jealousy led them to blindness. Not only were they hurting Cinderella, but they tried to take advantage of her. This disrespect does not define them as characters, and rather conveys how they were manipulated by their mother. The impact of this moment illustrates that peer pressure can lead one to envy those of higher status. On April 15, 2013, at approximately 2:50 p.m., 2 bombs exploded near the finish line of the Boston Marathon. In total, the explosion killed 3 spectators and wounded more than 260 other people. The event was a disaster and is remembered as one of the most devastating days in history. The impact of the Boston Marathon was major, as it left many questioning their safety. This event once again brought the U.S. together as many rescue personnel and citizens stepped up to help others. Alright, so to review, we just talked about how a single moment in life can have major impact, and we reviewed the books of Mice and Men, Persepolis, 102 Minutes, Cinderella, and the modern-day example of the Boston Marathon. Now, what you're seeing on your screen right now is a simplified version of what we just talked about, so feel free to check that out.
Well, that is all I have for you today on Crash Course Literature Edition. Thank you guys for all stopping by and have a good day.